It's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
Presenting issue number 100! Woo! Objection! Hello, everypony! I'm MasterCode, your ace analyst, and we've finally reached the big milestone for the MLP IDW comics. After years of slice of life and epic adventures in Equestria, we finally arrive at Season 10, Episode 12, issue number 100. And this isn't even counting all the other issues of the MLP comics, which equal to about another 100 comics altogether. With G5 on the horizon and G4 nearing the end of its comic run, it's a bittersweet feeling knowing that there will be only a few more comics wrapping up this amazing series with all the amazing, interesting, expanded lore and characters we've met along the way. But that's a discussion for another day. Now, let's dive into the long-awaited issue number 100 and finally learn about the Knights of Harmony.
Behold! Corn!
We begin our story actual, arriving at the avian city of Ornithia, the birthplace of Captain Silano. Though the homes do look like typical birdhouses, I do like the unique aesthetic rather than just the city being just regular buildings and such. Plus, the cages do serve a practical purpose as their homes can be moved from one location to another in case of emergency, or just wanting a better view. In terms of comic design aesthetic, I do appreciate how we see a wide variety of bird species rather than just the parrots. The gang eventually makes their way to the throne room where oh hey look, a tree of harmony, and everything's all good. Well, mission accomplished, comic over. Bye! Alright, moving on. The rulers of Ornithia and the Equestrians hit it off well, and in auspicious timing, we discover that Silano's old friend Aussie Pete is getting married to Prince Hugin of the Western Ravens. Well, a fine howdy do to you as well, sir.
Don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious.
With all these various elements of the Friendship Ambassador mission, including the marriage, the Tree of Harmony, and whatnot, I was afraid the plot was going to feel too bloated, but the writers actually balanced this out pretty well. As we'll see, the comic is paced well enough that it gives enough time for the Knights, the Tree, Silano, and Aussie Pete's relationship, and more. There are still some questionable elements, but we'll get to those in a bit. Fair warning, folks, Aussie tells us the story of the Knights of Harmony and these various trees of harmony encountered in Season 10. Strap yourselves in, folks. This is gonna get kind of complex. We learned that these trees of harmony aren't just focused around friendship, but rather each tree governs a different attribute with different elements. The Ornithian temple is focused around the elements of love, which comprise of generosity, kindness, hope, protection, trust, and perseverance. Along with that, apparently they need 3 pairs of birds to power those elements. Thus the reasoning for Aussie and the prince's marriage to fulfill those final 2 thrones as we saw earlier. She also explains that each of these temples represent different bonds, those being love, Ornithia, family, Canania, purpose, Abyssinia, patriotism, which is not explained, and friendship with Equestria, which was apparently only rumored to exist. I'll come back to this in a second, but on to the actual knights themselves. The Knights of Harmony were a group of 6 creatures who built temples for all these trees of harmony, and taught the local populace how to utilize these elements' powers. They lived on the island of Kanabula, a peaceful utopia. Aware of the chaos in the outside world, they begin their harmonizing mission around the world, building said temples. Thus we have the 5 lights representing the temples in the Phaeacian coast, Abyssinia, Canania, Ornithia, and the Knight's home. Eventually, something happens and the lights go out one by one, leading to Ornithia ascending to the clouds, anticipating a possible attack, and the Knights essentially disappear, leading to the end of the story.
Everybody got that?
I have several questions.
Okay, so that was a lot to digest. There are some elements here that I question or don't make much sense. First off, we know that there are 6 Knights of Harmony that go out on this epic harmony mission. I'm with you up to that point. And the Knights created these temples along with these intricate light panels. So, if they were seeking a 6th Tree of Harmony, which was equestrians, why would they only put 5 lights instead of 6 on the panel? What if theoretically they found 2 or 3 more? Minor issues, but still, why wouldn't they just have more lights on standby? Ignoring the rule of 6s in this show, again, why would there only be 5 lights? Also, the Knights are able to locate all of these major cities of the major races of the world, yet they can't locate the one in Equestria? I know why, and I'm not questioning that reason, but the bigger question is, how did they know where all the trees were originally? Did they literally just fly over every square inch of the planet in a vain attempt to find them, and they just got lucky? Or can they just sense them? The Knights' powers and abilities are so poorly defined, with the comic just saying they travel from place to place, help out the locals understand their tree, and move on. As I mentioned, all the lights begin to go out one by one, but we're never told why they all burn out almost at once. Now, before you say anything, yes, obviously I know that if the current elements of each location lost their way or disappeared, the tree would lose its power, and thus a blank light is basically a red alert. Although, that makes me wonder if someone is tasked with fixing the lights if they do burn out.
Step up to red alert.
Sir, are you absolutely sure? It does mean changing the bulb.
But what cataclysmic event would lead to such an eventuality with the major races? Here's the bigger issue, and where I'm going with this. We know in the Phrasian Coast arc that the temple is overtaken by the desert, which is fine and rumors still exist about it today. The problem is what happened to the dogs and cats Tree of Harmony. These trees are literally out in the open of their empires when the Knights discover them and build temples for them. Yet in Canania, it somehow ends up in an underground mine, and in Abyssnia, it's locked in a chamber underneath the city. How did this happen? More importantly, how come there are no records of such a thing existing in any of those cities? How did they get from the center of the towns to deep underground? Who moved them there? Or were they destroyed and they slowly regrew their roots, just like we saw in What Lies Beneath? So many questions. How? What? When? Why?
It just raises too many questions.
Hopefully, we'll learn more in the ensuing issues. Moving on, Aussie explains her marriage to the prince is to represent the final 2 missing elements in their city. As for the other 4 rulers, they already have their elements chosen with a pre-established relationship. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm not calling out the fact that we know next to nothing about these other 4 rulers and not knowing their exact elements, as I called out in the previous arcs, and their lack of characterization. Well, simply because this story isn't about them. Sure, to unlock their true potential, they do need 6 avians representing those elements, but unlike the previous 2 arcs, there aren't really any issues troubling the kingdom prior to this wedding, so there's no immediacy. Plus, those other 4 have been established for a long time as element bearers. This is a story about Aussie, the prince, and her relationship with Silana, and yes, the Knights. Point is, because of the story structure, this lack of characterization for the elements didn't bother me as much. It's not a good reason, mind you, as it doesn't flesh out the story and characters, but events are set in motion for the sake of the comic, and it really doesn't come into play until the end. Silano pulls Aussie aside to discuss the marriage, calling out how much of a prick the prince is, and she's basically just doing this to fulfill the last 2 elements. While this conversation isn't necessarily deep, it is a decent emotional conversation of the 2 laying out their woes, with both having legitimate grievances with one another about their past, yet still have an understanding of their decisions. Aussie originally came up with a plan to become pirates, but Silano up and left one day because Aussie's dad is a jerk and ultimately wouldn't have let her go. As for the prince, we catch him talking to a shadowy figure who admittedly doesn't want to go through with this charade, but their scheme is discovered by Lyra and Bonbon.
Hey, this isn't where I parked my car.
By the way, Lyra and Bonbon are kind of wasted in this comic, as while they do discover the prince's true intentions, it doesn't lead to anything, and their dismissal from the comic wouldn't have changed a single thing. Rainbow and the rest of the friendship team similarly fall victim to the mysterious figure and are ultimately deposited on their damaged ship, which is on a collision course for the ground. After the crash, the team regroups and make plans to head back. How did they do that? Rainbow and Spitfire use a parachute along with their Pegasi speed to literally launch her into the wedding ceremony. Oh yeah! Okay, I know Pegasi are fast, but this wedding was supposed to take place the next day. So let's be fair and say at least 12 hours have passed. They wake up after their crash and it takes little to no time to travel the distance from the desert to the actual building where the wedding is now currently taking place. That's kind of a lot to buy, comic, even for 2 of the fastest and best Pegasi in Equestria. A fight breaks out and holy crap, he's literally trying to kill her. This fight is awesome. Short, but awesome. Once the initial dust settles, the mysterious figure turns out to be one of the Knights of Harmony, whose goal is now to annihilate Equestria, and before leaving, enlarges the prince, leading to massive destruction of Ornithia. Cylano is revealed to be the element of perseverance, and the 6 rulers unite to save the day. And we end off the comic with Rainbow flying back to Equestria, revealing the Knights are attacking. Though it was hinted, I am still interested to see where this is all going. What series of events did Equestria perform to cause the Knights to belay their mission of harmony to now want to cause chaos and destruction in Equestria? Could they have interpreted their morals in such a way that they have corrupted their original beliefs in a way so that they now must cleanse the world for the greater good? We'll find out in the next issue, but as for issue number 100, how was it? It was good. Not as great as a Landstone comic should be, as the IDW team has created many more stories much better and thought out. The main problem is that there is just a lot of information dumped on the reader, which is necessary, I understand, but there are just so many questionable story elements of the Knight story, and when you have a comic that's primarily exposition, it doesn't give enough time to fully flesh out a character's history. I will say, despite these issues, the pacing from one part to the next was well done, allowing just enough time to leave an impact on every single scene and not linger on too far. I still enjoyed what conversations there were, the action was also decent, and there were also some good comedic moments as well. Despite my issues, I was still entertained and intrigued enough that I still recommend this comic. Next time, we'll see what madness occurs in the next issue as the Knights of Harmony attack Equestria. Well, that's it for the day, guys. Until next time, and see ya!